One. Kevin, that I've been communicating with for a while now, experienced his first spiritually transformative experience during a serious automobile accident. This gifted him with a recall of his past life, revealing the nature of time as a relative and illusory concept, and challenging everything he thought he knew about existence. And second was an automobile accident, which led to an out-of-body experience. During the OBE, he encountered beloved family members and felt an overwhelming pull towards the afterlife. Although he wished to stay on the other side, he was sent back, gaining a deep understanding that our true essence transcends our physical existence, and that we're not merely human bodies inhabiting this earth. His third one was 65, that less than a year ago. Kevin's drowning in a swimming pool brought an NDE. In this instance, he was shown the profound value of life and the realization that he has important, unfinished business on this plane of existence. The dog pictures below help save Kevin's life. So thank you very much for doing this for us this evening, Kevin. And we're so grateful for your wanting to share, and please proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tina. Such a great introduction. I'd like to thank Bethany as well for obviously for hosting this as well as the Sunday meetings and suggesting that I kind of share my story with you. And Tina has been invaluable. When I had questions about things, I would email or call her, and she was always very responsive in terms of giving me some insight into things that I wasn't quite sure of. And I still have a lot of questions, to be quite honest. I've only been with IANDS now for about 4 months, 5 months. And although my near-death experiences started 45 years ago now, it's only been recently that I'm really become more and more active in reviewing what went on. And part of that, again, thankfully, and Tina, she recommended I document everything. And had I been documenting over the past 45 years, I think I'd have a lot more material. That said, I'll try and keep this short and sweet. Looks like I got up to 14 pages, and I've been cutting it down as much as I could. At first, I was afraid, when Bethany first mentioned it, I thought it was going to be a 15-minute discussion, and she said 45, and I said, oh my goodness, how am I going to fill 45 minutes? And after a few days, I realized I was running into a problem. I said, Tina, I don't know how I'm going to cut this down to 45 minutes. But that said, we'll move along. Just a quick disclaimer, these are my own thoughts and experiences. Yours may be different, and that's great. I'm only here to tell you what happened to me. And you're welcome to question, choose to believe or not to. For a long time, I questioned my OBE because a lot of what we're taught, in Western society is a lot different than the experiences that I've had and the experiences I've seen others have. So a little background on me. I was born in the Bronx in 1959. My father passed away when I was 2, and I was sent to live with my aunt. My mom was left with 6 children between 2 and 16 and had never worked a day in her life. So how she managed to raise 6 children on her own never ceases to amaze me. And in growing up, members of my family battled with alcohol, which made growing up happily kind of difficult. Childhood was difficult. But I knew I was in a loving home, which is important. I was raised a Catholic, but I haven't remained one. Just for me, I've been an agnostic for almost all of my life. But lately, especially after my 3rd NDE, I feel like I'm being drawn more towards God. And around 25 years ago, I kind of developed this concept in my mind that God may not be an actual being, but rather a collective of souls that were intentioned towards being good, and quite possibly the devil is a collection of souls that is intention on doing evil. And I think as man, we vacillate between the two. You know, some days we're doing good things, other days not so much. But the more I'm starting to see through theology and even quantum mechanics, it's leaning me towards that God is an actual being. Talk briefly here about NDEs. Just originally I thought I had 3 NDEs, but when I checked the definition of NDE, it talked about being near clinical death. And really the only time I was near clinical death was the 3rd experience. So what did I have then? So I went out and looked and said, well, what's an NDE? What's an STE? And for STEs, there are so many different kinds of STEs. NDEs, NDLEs, OBEs, EHEs, ADCs. In my opinion, it's a very broad definition. So I'm not a big fan of the acronym STE. The other thing is it's a little bit too close to STD, and nobody wants one of those, right? So I came up with my own. I started referring to it as PATE, which is a profound astral transformational experience. So my first NDE, as Tina was mentioning, I was 18 years old. It's 1977. I was on the Long Island Expressway early Saturday morning. It was raining very hard. I lost control of the car and I spun around 180 degrees and crashed into the median. So now I'm facing westbound on the eastbound side. This was back before the days of seatbelts, and so I wasn't wearing one, and I got thrown completely to the other side of the car. My shoulder smashed into the door. It may have hit my head. I'm not quite sure about that. But I'm now sitting in the passenger seat looking at the eastbound traffic coming at me. And there's one car in each lane at highway speeds, I don't know, 55 miles an hour or more in the rain. And quickly, I pretty much summed up, I'm up on the median, I can't open the door. The car had power windows, which in those days the motors were a little slower. It'd probably take 5 to 10 seconds to be able to lower and climb out. And I knew I couldn't get out on the driver's side because that would have been worse. So pretty much at that moment, I believed I was going to die. What was interesting was I wasn't scared, but my brain was processing information really quickly. And then I just kind of blacked out and I went back through my life. And before this, I had, heard of people having their life flash before their eyes. But this was very surprising to me because in the space of just a couple of seconds, I relived every second, every minute of my first 13 years. So it was as if I was going back and reliving my life from a childhood. In incredible detail, but just at such an accelerated rate. When I came back, I felt like I'd been electrocuted. If you've ever been electrocuted, your muscles get very powerful and very strong. And when I came back, my entire body, it felt like it had been electrocuted. Everything was very powerful. My mind was incredibly alert, and I'm thinking at a speed that I never knew possible. Nothing like I had ever experienced before. But at the same time, I felt immense peace. Now, those 3 cars are still coming at me. And I'm sitting there watching this almost like it's a movie. I've got no fear. Survival instinct didn't kick in. I was going to die, and I was okay with that. So I just sat patiently and waited to die. And then, as if in slow motion, the car in my lane managed to slow down and move into the center lane. Okay, great, I'm going to live. So at that point, you think a normal reaction would be, let me jump in the driver's seat, start the car, and get out of here. But I didn't. I remember looking over the dash and just sitting there. There could have been other cars or trucks coming at me. What I had gone through was so profound and racing through my mind that what was happening in front of me, it didn't even occur to me to be concerned with it. I was so mesmerized by what had happened. And the first thought that came to my head was, this is amazing how much information the brain can process in such a short time. How can you fit 18 years inside of a couple of seconds? I don't know. And I'm not sure how long I sat there. I'm sure it was less than 10 minutes, but at some point I said, I better get out of here. So I jumped over to the other side of the car, started it up, and I got out of there. As the day went on, I forgot more and more of what I had seen. When I first came back, I remembered a lot of it, incredible detail. And by the end of the day, I had lost a lot of it. And when I woke up the next day, pretty much everything was gone other than remembering I had the experience, but the detail wasn't there. So I would suggest to anyone, if you do have any kind of experience like that, write it down as quickly as possible, because it can be very fleeting. So 12 years later now, I'm 30 years old and I'm married. And I'm on the Grand Central Parkway near LaGuardia Airport. And another automobile accident, and it's raining again. I'm in the right lane, and a taxi was in the center lane, and he pulled over and cut me off. So I had two choices: either hit the cab or drive up on the shoulder. Back in those days, the shoulders was still cobblestone. So when I got up on the cobblestone, I completely lost traction, spun around 180 degrees, and then I blacked out. The car continued to spin around for a total of 450 degrees, so 90 degrees to the left of where I had started, and I slid up an embankment. But I don't remember anything other than looking backwards. I don't remember that whole part. And the next thing I know, I am above my car, and I'm moving up, and it's raining out, and I'm looking up, and I go through the clouds. And it kind of reminded me of when you're in an airplane and you're on the ground and it's raining, and it's, this isn't such a great day, and then you go through the clouds and it's sunny and it's beautiful. Your whole perspective changes. So when I got above the clouds, I just saw nothing but light, and it was great. I don't remember any of the remainder of my trip other than going through the clouds and I'm there. I didn't see a wormhole or a vortex. Where there was, I still can't put a name to. But all of a sudden, I was there. So I've gone from, I don't know, a few hundred feet above LaGuardia Airport to whatever this place is. And I realized right away I didn't have a body. And I took that, very naturally, like I'd always known that. I feel like I should have been freaking out, but I wasn't. Again, I was at total peace, like I'd never felt in my life. I never knew how stressful it is just being in a human body. And even till then, not knowing that you could exist in non-human form, I had always thought, as you talk growing up, this is you. No idea that this is only a shell, right? So I'm in this place, and it's kind of like a giant movie theater, I'll describe it as. And there's an aisle going down the middle to kind of an arched doorway with a very bright light behind it. And over on the left, there's these group of souls. And over on the right, there's another group of souls. And they kind of appear like two-dimensional figures. They're like shadows I really can't see any 3D. I kind of visualize them as 2D. And the first thing I realized, the light was kind of pulling me. And I knew that if I go through the light, I wasn't going to go back. So I right away started thinking to my wife and said, I can't go. And then some voice said to me, she's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. She's going to be okay. Come into the light. So at this point, I just feel absolute bliss and love and no stress like I've never experienced. It was amazing. So I'm in this giant movie theater, and I start getting pulled towards the towards the center aisle, and I'm not moving. I'm being pulled like a magnet. And as I'm going forward, I can feel the people on the left side. They're kind of like welcoming, and they're kind of like, ah, here comes a new guy, but no overwhelming affection or reaction. But over on the right, wow, there were souls that I knew, relatives, aunts, uncles, and my dad. Even one of my uncles who hadn't passed away yet. I thought that was really weird. How could he be there if he's still on Earth? I didn't think of it at the time, but just because I was so overwhelmed with what was going on. And the outpouring of love that I felt from those souls is like nothing I ever experienced on Earth. I just don't know how to describe it. And I could hear beautiful music, and it was playing kind of low, and I'm continuing to be drawn to the light. And what's weird is I'm visualizing these people on the left, I'm visualizing these people on the right, and plus seeing this portal of light, hearing this music, but I've got no body, I've got no eyes, I've got no ears. How does that happen? And I guess I never really questioned it too much. And about 10 years ago, I was sitting around the table and I was talking. My daughter said, it kind of sounds like ESP. And I said, geez, for over 35 years now, I couldn't figure that out. But I guess that's what it is. Anyway, I'm being pulled up towards this portal, and there's this incredibly bright light in there. And there's kind of like a fog in the air, almost like particulate hanging in the air. But you can see through it. And even though the light was the brightest light I had ever seen, what I thought was amazing, there was no glare. Maybe that's because you don't have eyes, but it was just incredibly inviting and warm. And as I'm moving forward, I can, as I said, feel my relatives over on the left and these other souls over on the right. I felt very loved. I was just in a state of total awe. And I thought back on this and I said, the closest I ever came to this while I was on Earth is when my 2 children were born. And interestingly enough, that just came out of the process of documenting, because I said, when have I ever really felt like that? So I get to the doorway. There's no door, but it's like an old arched doorway. And I see a figure in front of me, and it's levitated from the level I am. It's up a little, and unusually tall. The people in the anteroom, I'll call that, the kind of gray area where I was, they seem to be normal size. This figure was maybe 8 to 12 feet, my best guess. In human form and in 3D. I think I just thought of that. Where the other people were in 2D. It had a long white gown on it with pleats in it, and it was spinning counterclockwise like a ballerina you'd see in a crystal ball. And as it rotated, I could see gems in the gown, in the pleats of the gown as it's spinning, and they're green and red, and blue and yellow, and all these beautiful colors. And they're flickering on and off, kind of like LEDs. Of course, this was before LEDs were invented, but I just figured they were gems. And the figure is pointing up like this, not really looking at me. It's looking upwards and pointing up, as if to tell me, you need to turn your attention up there. But I couldn't see up there because I'm still on this side of the wall. And again, I'm just in a state of bliss and love. And at first I thought it was an angel. And then I could feel its presence, and it was my mother. And she was pulling me into the light and telling me to ascend. And again, I thought of my wife, but I just couldn't resist the magnetic pull that was pulling me into the light. And just as I started to enter the threshold, I actually felt a hand on my chest at that point, and I got pushed back very hard. and I heard the words, "Not yet." And I could feel my father. Even though he died when I was 2 years old, I could feel that was him. I wanted it to stay, and but I got sent back. And the biggest thing I learned from this is that I'm not just a human body, and that this isn't my home. For 35 years since then, I've often said I want to go home. No, you're home. Well, no, I'm not. This isn't my home. So now I come down, and I'm above the car, and I'm coming down back to my body, and I see a kind of like a truck pull up on the shoulder, and it's an ESU van, and I can see the officer get out on the driver's side, which was the traffic side, and he's starting to walk down the side of the vehicle. Now I'm back in my car, and I'm looking forward, but I can't see him because the truck's in the way. But I know he's coming. I'm sitting there waiting to see him, and he comes around the back, and he looks up at me, and in typical New York City cop fashion, here I am sitting like this, strung up in the mud and up on a embankment. And he looks at me and he says, "Hey, you can't park there." So I just cracked up laughing. Now a cab pulls up and the driver gets out. And I assume this was the cab that cut me off, and I just lose it. I'm yelling at the cab driver. I open the door. He jumps back in his taxi and takes off. And the officer, he asked me, "Oh, why are you yelling at him?" And I said, "Well, that's the son of a bee that cut me off." And the cop laughed. He said, "No, he just wanted to know if you needed a ride." So as I'm yelling at the cab driver, I tried to get out of the car. I opened the door and I stuck my left leg out. And I sunk in the mud about halfway to my knee. And I have a suit on because I'm working, and I'm going to fix an ATM in the city. And now I've got mud all over my pants. And as I lift my leg up, my shoe stays down in the mud. So now I got to roll up my sleeve and reach down in the mud to pull my shoe out. So he said to me, "Can you get out of there?" And I said, "Well, I think so." He said, "Well, good, because if you can't, I've got to shut the whole parkway down. That's not going to be good." So basically, I just pulled up a couple of feet, pulled back a couple of feet, and just did that for a little bit. And I was able to pull back around and get back on the road. And I drove into the city. I fixed the ATM. I went outside. I had a flat tire. And I changed it. And then I realized, well, I've got to get home. So I ended up, I don't know how I found this place, but Chago's Flats Fixed. I remember the name of it, on 116th Street. I get there, and the other 3 tires were all leaking. I never would have made it out of the city had I not gone there. So after this happened, I told my wife, but I didn't tell anybody else. I mean, this was 1990. I'd never heard about this kind of stuff before. And quite frankly, even though I'd gone through it, it didn't make sense to me. I really, really questioned it. And that went on for about 10 years. And it wasn't until I was listening to a radio show in the middle of the night, a guy called Art Bell, who used to be on Coast to Coast. And I'm listening one night, and he's talking to people that are talking about UFOs and about they've been, abducted. And some of the stories are a little out there. At this point, I'm still skeptical. But some of them made a lot of sense and had similar characteristics to the point of, wow, this really sounds legitimate. And then a couple of nights later, he had people calling in about what I'd gone through, which was, an out-of-body experience. And none of the stories matched mine, exactly, but there were a lot of similar characteristics. The bright light, the beautiful music, and most of all, that feeling of love that really hard to try and describe. but it didn't make sense. You know, it didn't make sense to me. You know, I often think of Occam's razor. So I had to allow for the possibility, well, maybe I imagined this, or maybe I dreamed it, or something happened other than this really happening. And I think that's due to what we're taught in Western society growing up, that, you know, these kind of things don't happen. It was kind of bizarre. But as this is going on, I know what happened. And I guess I'm almost denying it to myself. Not saying it didn't happen, but just having a hard time believing it. I kind of, as I was documenting this, I came up with a phrase. You know, I always thought that you believe something and then you know it, right? So I believe this is going to happen, or I believe this, and then when I get data to confirm that, now I know whether or not it happened. I knew what happened, but I was just having a real hard time believing it. And one of the lessons I've learned from that experience is, you know, you got to believe what you know to be true, even if it doesn't make sense to you. If you know it's true, if you really know it's true, then you need to believe it and go with it. So now I go back to life. I'm working. I'm not thinking about these things too much. And about 33 years go by. It's now 2021. And I'm watching Netflix, and I see this documentary called Surviving Death. And it's these stories of younger children that had past lives. And if you've ever seen this, if you haven't, I recommend watching it, because the stories, the amount of detail these young people knew about their past lives, it's, in my view, it's undeniable that, you know, this wasn't manufactured. This one guy, he was a Hollywood movie producer back in the 20s or 30s, an actor, I'm sorry. And he had listed about 80 different things about this person. And again, it took years before, because the parents were like, well, what's going on here? This doesn't make sense. But eventually they went to see these people after they tracked him down. And by now he's about 16 years old. I guess they say most people, when they have these past life experiences, by the time they're 5, they pretty much start to forget them. So there they are at 16, but they had everything all documented. They went through this list of, you know, 73 or 80 items, and so many of them were true. It was kind of frightening. But then one in particular, he said, you know, he had a blue car, and his granddaughter said, no, he never had a blue car. And then they found, eventually the granddaughter found out, oh, he actually did have a blue car. He knew the name of the street he had lived on. He knew he liked to go to Paris. He knew he liked monogram towels. You know, all of these strange things. And there's 3 other cases there as well. So I suggest if you get a chance, you watch that. So this is January 2021, and I started getting sick. I got COVID. And the doctor gave me steroids, and I wasn't getting any sleep, and eventually got shingles, probably due to my low resistance. And I went back to work after a week, and then I developed something called post-herpetic trigeminal neuralgia. And about 4 people out of 100,000 are unfortunate enough to get this disease. And as I came to find out, there's a reason why they call it the suicide disease. The pain is incredible, and it varies per person what'll aggravate it. So the trigeminal nerve runs up the side of your head here. It's the 5th cranial nerve. And typically what causes the condition is something's pushing on that nerve, either a tumor, or it could be MS, or in my case, it's likely a blood vessel that got misplaced. And basically, the first time it happened to me, I'm driving in a car, and it felt like somebody was sticking a screwdriver through the back of my head, and it was coming out my eyeball. And I just pulled over and screamed. And I go to see my GP, and she put me on like 250 milligrams of gabapentin. And it's because it's COVID, I can't get in to see a neurologist for 6 weeks. Now, every morning, it's usually between 9 and 9:30 when I go downstairs, I know this thing's coming. So I typically have what I call brain freeze, where all over my ear gets freezing cold or hot while I'm sleeping. There's pain and discomfort, that's livable, but when you have an attack, it's wrath of God. It's incredibly painful. So I'd literally go downstairs every morning, and when it came, I'd grab onto the counter, hold on, and just scream out loud. I really felt bad for my wife because she had to listen to this. And so I'm going through this, and eventually I get in to see the neurologist, and he puts me on heavy doses of nerve blockers. At one point, he had me up to 1,500 milligrams of gabapentin and 2,400 milligrams of oxcarbazepine. And I became a walking zombie. My wife said I looked like a drug addict. I fell down in the shower, and I broke off the spigot with my shoulder. And had I been a foot further away from the shower, I probably would have hit it with my temple. I was afraid to go downstairs. I had to call my wife to bring my meals upstairs. And those days were very brain foggy and painful. I became very depressed, not suicidal, but I went to bed every night hoping I'd die. I didn't want to be here anymore. And I started to understand why people get suicidal. Because you just want the pain to stop. And even a light breeze, if I went outside, would cause a flare-up. I remember we were at Home Depot, and I'm walking out to the car, and the wind starts blowing, even just very lightly, and it hurts tremendously. And I have to run past my wife and daughter back into Home Depot and call her on the phone and say, come pick me up, because I can't. In other words, I'm 40% of the way to the car. That's 60%. I got to go back. I was not in good shape. I'd go to empty the pool skimmer. It takes anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes to do that. That turned into half an hour or more, sometimes with a nap in between. I was also suffering from bradycardia, which is low heart rate. Life was just a mess. So around Thanksgiving, I realized if I continued on these nerve blockers, things were not going to end well. And the doctors kept telling me, oh, the drugs are not affecting your heart rate. But I knew better. So I started reducing the dosage against my neurologist's advice. I'm seeing a electrophysiologist for my heart. And the first time I see him, he says, you needed a pacemaker a month ago. And I said, okay. He says, I want to send you for a test. So he sends me to Duke Hospital, which takes me 2.5 months to get into, to have a PET scan. I had the PET scan done, and doesn't appear there's any problems. So I come back and I talk to the EP. Well, what are we going to do? So I wore a Holter monitor, and that didn't show anything too serious. I knew I had AFib, but I didn't realize how bad. I also have sleep apnea, but I didn't realize how bad the heart rate situation was. So again, I go back to see him just before Christmas time, and I'm like, I'm concerned things are not getting better. What do we want to do here? And he said to me, well, he said, you may not need a pacemaker for 10 years. He said, but you may be in the ER next week. And I said, well, what kind of answer is that? I'm looking for some guidance here. I'm not asking you to make the decision. Long story short, I ended up going to another doctor, now my wife's cardiologist. He recommended me to this EP out at Duke, and he's the guy down here. You know, he's the guy. If you rip your stitches out, your wires out, he's the guy you go to. So it took me a while to get I did a phone consultation with him, and he wants to do more tests. I said, well, I just had a PET scan done. He said, oh, no, we need to do whatever test he wanted to do, and then we're going to do some genetic testing. And I'm like, what the When I wore the second Holter monitor over Christmas, I started getting alerts from the monitoring company. Hey, you're having a problem here. You need to deal with this. And I had called that other EP, the one I was first dealing with, and he was on Christmas vacation. So I told his nurse when he comes back, please have him contact me. Well, long story short, it looks like he read the first page of the report saying my heart rate was going down to 40, which isn't too bad, especially in my case. I never had a high heart rate. But apparently he didn't read the second and third page, because when my wife and I started going through it, my heart rate was dropping as low as 28. And I said, this isn't good. I've only got 28 left. I don't want a pacemaker, but I think I need one. So I went back to her cardiologist again after consulting with the doctor at Duke. And he put me in touch with an EP that said, listen, do you really want to roll the dice here? You may not need a pacemaker for 10 years, but your heart rate's going down 28. I'm in agreement with you. So long story short, not a pacemaker, implanted. Then from that was a hip operation. And then, let's see, did anything else break during that period? No, I think I'm okay. So now it's the summer of 2024. And I'm in the pool 3 to 5 times a week. My diet's better. I'm pretty much off the drugs, and life's good again. And I decided to go swimming. And a lot of times when I go swimming, I'll take one of the dogs swimming with me. And typically the way it works is I'll swim a few laps, I'll throw his toy, and they love to jump in the pool, retrieve the toy, and bring it back. So I was going to take my pup that day, who was only about, at the time, he was about a year old. And I knew that if I took him, that he was going to require more maintenance, to keep him out of the grass and chewing sticks. He just required too much monitoring. I really wanted to get some laps in, so I said, I'll take my wife's dog instead. And the dog dropped the toy over on the side of the pool where the grass is. And I got out of the pool and I went over to pick it up. And as I did, I stepped on a fire anthill. And they're all over my leg really quickly. And so I wiped them off as best I could, and I got back in the pool and I washed the rest of them off. And I didn't think too much of it, because I've been bitten by fire ants before. What's the big deal? So I go back to swimming, and I swim a couple of laps, and something doesn't feel right. But when you're exercising, you're like, you got to push, keep going, you got this. So I kept pushing, and by the time 4 laps come, I'm like, no, something's really wrong here. I got to stop. And I'm standing in the shallow end of the pool, and I blacked out. And when I came to, I'm on the other side of the pool, right where the pool slopes down to the deep end, and I'm swallowing water. I guess that's what woke me up. And the only way I was able to maintain myself above water, I was kind of going under and coming back up, was I was kind of bouncing off the bottom with my feet and pushing myself up. And no problem, I'll just swim back. Well, I've got no upper body strength at all. I'm an anaphylactic shock, and I'm just like jello from the waist up. And at this point, I'm getting scared, and survival instinct kicks in, and I start screaming for my wife, who had gotten up to go do something, so she didn't know I was in distress. And as I'm there, I hear this voice that says to me, that's it, let's go. And I don't know who that voice was. It seemed like it was a masculine voice, and I felt like it didn't have my best interests at heart. And I just yelled, I screamed, no. And just after that, the dog had jumped in the pool, swam out to me, and I just wrapped my arms around him. And he swam back into the steps and brought me back in there. How he knew to do that, I have no idea. And even while I was being brought in, I just kind of had this feeling that I was spared because my work here is unfinished. there's some things I've got to do. And some of it was pointed out to me in the pool. Well, anyway, I'm laying on the steps now, and my wife comes out and says, get up. I said, well, if I could get up, I wouldn't be laying here. She said, you don't get up, I'm calling an ambulance. Our local hospital isn't great. I was like, please don't call an ambulance. Just let me lay here for like 20 minutes. I'll go inside, and then you can drive me to the hospital where my EP is. Because if I go in the ambulance, you're going to the closest hospital. You don't have a choice. Now it's June in North Carolina without a cloud in the sky. It's somewhere between 90 and 100 degrees. And you probably could have cooked an egg on my back. But I just wanted to lay there and rest. So she goes back in the house, comes back out and says, get up. And I said, I can't get up. She said, you don't get up, I'm calling an ambulance. Meanwhile, she'd already called the ambulance. So the ambulance arrives, and the first thing the guy says is, get up. I just started laughing. He said, listen, bud, we've been doing that for like 20 minutes now. If I could get up, we wouldn't have called you. Again, he says, get up. All I could do was laugh. So they tried to help me up. There were two guys and one girl. They tried to help me up, but I'm just like falling over. This, again, like they grabbed my arm, but I'm just like total jello. So then they threw a sheet underneath me, or a net, and they lifted me up out of the pool, stuck me on the stretcher, and loaded me in the ambulance. And I'm going in and out of consciousness. I remember getting loaded into the ambulance, and I don't know, making jokes about something and cracking the EMTs up. They were laughing. But on the way to the hospital, I went into VTAC. So they had to pull over, and the paramedic who was in his pickup truck had to run up, jump in the ambulance, and give me a shot of amiodarone. And so I came to when we got to the ER. As they're getting ready to bring me into the ER. And I asked the EMT, what happened? I said, I don't remember anything that happened after we made that one turn. He said, well, we had to pull over so the paramedic could deal with you. So I'd asked him, what was your BP? And he said, your blood pressure. He said, you had no BP, but he said, you're lucky to be here. And it's funny because as I think back, if I didn't have that pacemaker, I don't know if I would have survived that. Anyway, I spent 3 days in the hospital with pneumonia. And the ironic part is that after 8 months of wishing, pretty much 8 months of wishing I'd die every night, 35 years of wanting to go home, here I had the perfect opportunity to just lay back and let it take me there. But I didn't. I fought to stay here. And I was very confused. Why did this happen? And as time went on and I reflected on it, I realized, or at least I believe, that I was being told, all right, you don't appreciate how valuable life is and how precious it is. Okay, so we're just going to take it from you. And then when I fought back, it made me realize again how amazing life is. And things have changed drastically from, that was a couple of years ago. Just my whole perception of life and what we're doing here just changed drastically. So now, how did I get to IANDS? I'm not really sure. I must have seen something online, and I pretty much learned at this point to kind of let the universe guide me, because I thought I was in control. Little did I know that I really wasn't. So what did I learn from all of this? Well, as I said, I was shown the value of life and that I have unfinished business on earth. I also learned to listen to your inner voice. Like I said, believe what you know to be true, even though it may not make sense to you. I used to think time was linear. You get up in the morning and it's 7 o'clock, and then it's 7:01, 7:02. Einstein pretty much proved it wasn't. But when I went through 18 years inside of a matter of a couple of seconds, I realized that time as we know it is just, maybe on this plane it makes sense, but it's just an illusion. And I also realized we're only in a temporary shell. I don't understand eternity, but the more I look into it, the more I believe that we are eternal souls. I remember reading that every 7 years, your cells regenerate. Every cell in your body regenerates in 7 years. So 7 years ago, you were a totally different person than you are right now, a totally different body. More and more, I'm just starting to understand that more than likely, yeah, we are eternal, and that we do this multiple times. Also told me to stop trying to control everything, kind of let the universe guide me. And I was kind of confused as to where these kind of messages were coming from. You know, was it my higher self? Was it my subconscious? Was it God? And I kind of talked to Tina about that, and she said, well, think of it this way. It doesn't really matter where it's coming from. What's more important is, are you serving people? You know, if you're in the service of other people, we not only help them, we help ourselves become better souls. So I also question why the suffering? You know, I look not just myself, but the entire earth. Why do we suffer? And long story short, we need the dark to appreciate the light. And that maybe the neuralgia from healing from it, when you heal from suffering, you lose the attachment to the things that cause suffering. If that makes any sense. I'm kind of envious of people that have a relationship with God. I'm working on mine, but at the same time, I can't be hypocritical because I kind of tend to think critically, and I don't have a clear understanding in my mind who God is. I'm changing exponentially. It's almost like part of my brain was asleep and it's been woken up. I remember Warren Zevon. He had cancer, and he was on a talk show, and they asked him, you know, you going through this terrible cancer. What did you learn from this? And he said, I learned to enjoy every sandwich. It actually became a thing. When they have T-shirts and hats that say "Enjoy every sandwich." I mean, Warren Zevon died after that. But I kind of thought about that, and I said, you know what? I can't wait. I can't wait to enjoy the sandwich. I've got to enjoy every bite. I've got to enjoy every minute. I've got to really appreciate every second I'm here. And when you're working, it's a lot easier once you're retired. But when you're working, it's much harder to do that because you're constantly distracted by so many things around you. You lose focus on what's really important. Time is becoming less and less relevant for me. Where do I need to be? I need to be right here, right now. Okay, why do souls choose to come back? This was a good one, because from what I'm hearing, other people that have had these experiences say that once you pass, not, you know, I was sent back in the middle of a lifetime, but once you pass, then you regenerate again. And you not only choose to come back, you kind of choose a contract of things that you're going to abide by, accomplish. And you actually even choose your own parents. I don't know. I haven't had any experience with that. But I kept saying to myself, why would anyone want to come back here? Why would you want to come back here when there is so amazing, so beautiful, and so full of love? And it was actually when I was detailing this and writing out my story, I might have realized why. Because I thought about it and I said, if I had to be stuck in one place for eternity, you know, even for a matter of minutes or days, or what would it be? And I said, would it be up there? And I thought about it, and I thought back on my children's birth and my wife and the good times we had, especially when they were young. And if I had to get stuck in one place, it'd be in a room with those three, just having a great time. So I said, well, maybe bliss and unconditional love gets boring after a while. don't know. I don't know. So that's pretty much my story. I think I have another 3 pages, but I haven't managed to go through it all yet. But
Kevin, such a great job. Will you take some questions? Can you take
no,
questions?
no, no, I'm kidding. Yes, of course.
Okay. Anyone has questions? Put your hand up. Okay. Bethany?
Yeah, thank you so much. I wanted to just thank you so much, Kevin. That was such an amazing experience. I, of course, hope you didn't get a parking ticket for that spin out on the freeway in New York. What a beautiful story, incredible. I just had to say thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, Bethany, and it's almost as if I'm kind of being told to do that. It's not even like a conscious choice. Once I was on IANDS, and I've got to say, IANDS has been great. Going on to I've been to the Hawaii group and the Long Island group and the Sunday sharing group with you, and it's been amazing because, like I said, for 40 years, I pretty much kept this to myself because I just didn't know that other people went through this, and I was even questioning whether it happened. And once you're able to talk to other people that have had similar things happen, and it just totally vindicates you. All right, I'm not crazy. Right?
Very good. Thank you. Laurie?
Thank you, Casey. You mentioned your story is quite incredible. I could relate to so many things. So you said a few times, to make a long story short, well, I'd like to hear the long story because everyone says to me, Lori, what's your story? My story is long. I can relate to what you said about wanting to go home. I was toxically poisoned by mold. I was very sick for a few years, and I had one foot here and one foot there. And I kept saying, I want to go home. And I knew home was not here for the first time. And, I also was so toxically poisoned by the mold toxins that I thought suicide was a good idea. It made me think that that's what I should do. Thank God I had a lot of people supporting me, and I didn't. I, like you, was raised Catholic, and I still don't know what my idea of God is, but I'm glad you talked about it. Also, I was visiting my sisters who moved to North Carolina for the last few years. And last year, I went and we were swimming in the pool for 3 days. It was 100 degrees at the end of June. And I had a heart attack. But the one I'd been thinking I was going to have for a while. And I didn't go to the hospital. It would have been Duke. I took 3 aspirin and 3 nitro. And I got on the plane and I came home thinking my doctors would help me. But they didn't, even though my EKG showed I was probably having a heart attack. 2 times I got released from the hospital. So the suffering through all of that almost seems small compared to what you went through, especially with the nerve pain from the shingles. I've been pondering a shingle shot the last 2 days, so it's interesting that you bring that up. It's wonderful that the animal saved you. It's wonderful that you found IANDS. And I'm just so happy you're here tonight to share with us. It really I admire your courage to tell us your personal thoughts about everything that happened to you, because it meant a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Willie, and then Jim, and then Megan. Willie, your sound.
Okay. Casey, thank you for that wonderful story. I just want to know,
It's Kevin.
okay.
It's Kevin.
Oh, Kevin,
Yeah.
okay.
Casey's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Don't make me forget what I was going to ask. All right. Did you, or do you feel that moving to that other dimension was more real than this physical dimension? And do you possibly feel that this physical dimension is an illusion and the reality is the other dimension that you went to?
That's a really good question, Willie. And I guess I failed to mention that, but yes, I feel that this is only like a temporary sandbox that we get sent to. And yeah, this is an illusion. That's reality. And I guess in a way, kind of this is reality as well. It's just kind of a different kind. But you know, we kind of think of, you know, we're awake and then we go to sleep, and that's, you know, that's an illusion, what we dream about. But I think actually, I didn't mention, I started doing astral projection as well. And I'm more convinced, the more I see and the more I do it, the more I am convinced that other realm is reality. And this is just some kind of experiment.
That's good. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Jim?
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for your story and your life story. And I had a question, and that's, yeah, I feel for me that an NDE is, it's almost like it's a path that has been given you, and all you have to do is walk it, and it unfolds you. Of, if this were applied in your case, what aspect of returning and becoming a more complete human being has most resonated with you in your day-to-day living? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I kind of mentioned some of the things there towards the end in the way that I've changed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about that we live in a life of stress, right? I guess what
Yeah.
Ralph Waldo Emerson used to call
Quiet
sorry,
desperation.
CRS is kicking in. Yes, living a life of quiet desperation. So you're in reality, and like I said, especially when you're working, there's so many other things going on. So how has it changed my day-to-day living? One, I'm a much happier person. Two, I avoid conflict. If there's any conflict with my family, I'll either diffuse the situation or I'll walk away. I used to lose my temper. I used to get angry. Everything here, Jim, has become much smaller. You know,
Mhm.
although it's great and it's beautiful and it's amazing, all of a sudden now that used to be, you know, the world used to be this, right? This giant thing. And now it's kind of
Yeah.
like this. And I'm focused more on the big picture now. But really good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Megan?
So I just want to say hi to Uncle Kevin. That I don't know if you can see, but you've got a lot of your nieces and nephews on this call. So I just wanted to say from all of us, we're really proud of you that you shared this because none of us ever knew.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. And again, that's just because of the fact that it was, at least in my mind, so outside the norms of society. And for those of you that don't know my relatives, they're all what you would call smart asses. So I even hesitated on inviting them. I asked Bethany to be okay, because I said, I don't know what kind of questions we're going to get. And my nephew Keith had said, no, you've got to invite everyone. So I did. So for those of you that are here, thanks very much. I appreciate it. And I love you all very much. And Jim, that's another thing. The connection with people. I've always had kind of a empathic understanding of other people, kind of walk in a room and be able to tell how they feel. That's grown much stronger now. When I was talking to Tina on the phone, I could feel her. It was if I'd known her for years, and I could connect with her. And all of you, although I've moved down south and most of my family's still up north, and I miss you very much. But thank you all for coming.
Oh, we miss you, and we learned all our smart assness from you. So we can credit all of that to you.
That's cute. Thank you.
Great.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. Let's see. Laurie, you had a question before Jim.
Kevin, thank you again. My question is, I struggle with, I knew if I left here when I had my NDE that I would be coming right back. And I was pleading with God, literally, please don't make me come back. At the same time, you want to go home. And a lot of people who have NDEs argue with the spirit that they encounter, that they have to be sent back and they don't want to come back. And you explained it a little bit about it might be boring on the other side. And you also mentioned reincarnation. So these topics interest me. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your feelings of wanting to go home. And the other thing is, now that I've had one time near death, and I feel like close to death every day for 2 years now, I want to stay here. The human will is amazing. And you talked about that too. So I appreciate those things you talked about, but I was wondering if you could expand on it a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Laurie. And you kind of brought a couple of things, I think, that were on page 14 to my attention. I'm a little bit envious of other people's experience. I hear they go into the light. I didn't get a chance to. So two things that kind of bothered me was I didn't go into the light, and B, I didn't see any of my pets. Now, we've had over the years probably over 30 dogs over the past 30 years. We used to breed dogs, so like right now we have 7 of them. I didn't see any of my dogs that I loved very much. I was kind of disappointed in that. And I was kind of disappointed that other people kind of got through to go through the light, and I didn't get, and their stories are amazing. Well, a lot more amazing than mine. They sit down, they have a life review, and I found that was something that was kind of interesting, was that people will have a life review and an OBE, and mine were kind of fractured. I just had the life review and then I had the OBE with 2 different experiences. But yeah, as far as going home, I will say this, and getting back to what Jim said, how things changed for me. While I really do want to go home, before it was my primary focus. I want to get out of here. I want to go home. And I'm not just talking about when I had neuralgia. I'm talking about the past 35 years. In the back of my mind, I always wanted to. And now it's kind of just the opposite. I want to stay. And I understand that when that time comes, then it'll happen. I've got to stop. If I'd known then what I know now, I wouldn't have tried to stay. I would have been like, okay,
Need a
what do you
babysit
want
your
me to do?
brother.
What do you want me to do? So I'm a lot less in control now the way I used to be. But I look forward to the time I'll get there. But from what I understand, I'm coming back here again anyway. So that kind of becomes a whole, because sometimes I was just like, just let this whole thing end. Let me rest. It's kind of like going to sleep and never waking up, and we'll be done with it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been a great life.
Yeah.
But now with the thought that I'm going to be coming back again, it's kind of like it's changed everything, because it's like when you go on a trip and you're like, I got to get to this destination. I'm just focused on the destination, and you're not enjoying the trip. You're just focused on getting there. And then you get there and you kind of go, we could have stopped all these places. We could have done these things. I could have had a great time, but I didn't, because I was so worried about the destination. And for me, that's the way I've always been. Okay.
Well, thank you. Jim?
Yeah, as I hear you, it reminds me of something I thought of recently, and that's life is not meant to be transcended. Life is meant to be lived. If we're here, we live it here. If we're in a transcendent state, we live it there. And that does keep us focused on the mission at hand. I mean, there's a reason any one of us who's had a near-death experience returned and didn't continue on. And so I think that's why the focus here is important. But taking that into consideration, do you have any sense of what your next steps are as your NDE continues to unfold within you as a transcendental experience or transformational experience?
Good question, Jim. I feel much more of a responsibility, not a heavy burden, but a responsibility to help people more. I volunteered for a teenage suicide hotline, I thought, and it was pretty much a text hotline, and I was all set to go forward with that. Unfortunately, they had different ideas about dealing with people that kind of believed there were more than two sexes and pronouns and stuff, and I couldn't get behind that. Again, even thinking about God, I can't be hypocritical about it. So that didn't work. I'm looking into Samaritan's Purse and helping there. Possibly going into old age homes and meeting with people. But I just, through my whole life, I've always felt when I went to work, part of my job was if I met someone that wasn't having a great day, it's my job to make them feel better. And I could feel if I could just turn one person around in a given day, that was a good day for me. Didn't matter if stuff blew up at work. I made this person feel better. And I feel much more of a calling to do that now. And I'm kind of trying to sparse out what the best way to do that is. Like I said, I started with the teen suicide hotline. I think I would have been a candidate for that, but unfortunately, our values conflicted. But Samaritan's Purse seems like a good way to go. And I'm looking at other volunteer organizations, possibly with veterans and older age people. I used to go with my daughter to the vet's hospital. We used to bring one of our dogs in there, a therapy dog, and we just bring him in, and he would sit with, the veterans, and they just pet him, and it just changed their whole day. I mean, these poor people are sitting around doing nothing for a good part of the day, and to bring in someone from the outside, and especially a pet, that really opens up things when you bring a dog in. So it's much more of a push towards helping other people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bethany?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, incredible. Again, thank you, Kevin. It's an incredible story. I do want to propose that IANDS looks for volunteers all the time to facilitate groups if there's any interest there. And there's great training, and people have, you know, I know Tina went through the training, and Patrick Norris, who's here tonight, he's also a facilitator and a moderator. Good to see you, Patrick. And really anyone can go through the training, and it's excellent training. And the work is, you know, creating a safe space for people to share their incredible experiences. So although they may be different from your beliefs, you know, it's about creating a non-judgmental safe space. And I, aside from sharing that, I had questions about your integration. And I know you talked about relationships, and Jim asked a great question about relationships. And I just wondered how well you manage small talk now, and if you've developed less tolerance for small talk as your spirituality has unfolded.
Wow, another great question. And I tended to be a very communicative person. I spoke a lot, and it's what allows me to pretty much open up here. But yes, I've found that, especially since my last episode, that I'm much more introspective, and I'm processing things without where I would process them verbally before. Like I said, if we were having a disagreement, I would engage in that, and anymore, I'll just stand back and try to analyze the situation as opposed to just reacting to it. So that's been a big change. My wife and daughter haven't figured that out yet, because after 40 years of spending time with the guy I used to be, they're not quite there in terms of who this guy is, and that's okay. It's going to take time, but yeah, I'm a lot more introspective. I bite my tongue a lot more than I used to in the past. A really good question, Bethany. And as far as the IANDS thing, yeah, I'll be in touch with you. That sounds like something I would be interested in.
Thank you, Bethany. Laura, so nice to see you.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Well, speaking of wanting to help people, usually on Mondays, I'm sitting with a friend whose husband goes away on Monday nights to bowl, and she can't be left alone because she's blind. So I had a heart attack about 12 years ago, and I almost didn't make it. They told me if I'd have been 15 minutes later, I wouldn't be here. But I've been a hospice volunteer for 25 years now, and they have therapy dogs that go to visit hospice people, and I find that very rewarding. But the question I have is, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but doing the hospice work, I've been with a lot of people when they were close to their transition time, and a lot of them will reach a hand up or call out a name. One told me that they saw an angel in the window, and I've always been of the understanding that someone always comes and crosses over with you. What do you think about that?
Well, first, let me thank you for doing work in hospice. My wife did hospice work for about 10 years, and I saw the strain it took on her, dealing with death, on a weekly or monthly basis. So thanks very much for doing that. And what was the question again? Sorry.
I've always been of the understanding that someone always comes to greet you and goes with you as you transition. Do you believe that or no?
That certainly could be. It hasn't been my experience because I don't know if I've exactly transitioned. I was at the point where I could have gone forward. And as I said, my mother was there. So possibly that's what was happening there. And I felt my father pushing me back. But I really didn't have, there was some, as I said, that voice in my head when I was saying I'm worried about my wife, I can't leave her. There was some someone or something telling me she's going to be okay.
Okay.
And it was less of a some kind of being and more of a just kind of a physical. Well, can't say physical, but more of kind of an attraction. Just like I said, almost a magnetic attraction where you can't help but move forward.
Well, I feel like I was left here because of the work I do. I'm a Reiki volunteer, and I have developed this. Well, I learned it from someone else, but I've developed my own style of doing a clearing of the chakras when someone is close to death, so that they're relaxed enough that they can just let go. And I've had people pass right while I was doing it or shortly thereafter. So I feel like that's why I was kept here. Because I was at a point where I just looked up and said, God, if you want to take me now, it's okay. I'll just help people from the other side.
Very good. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Okay, Patrick? Your sound?
Sorry, I should be better at that by now. Kevin, I really was intrigued with the part of the story I caught and just your energy while telling the story. And I was just wondering, like, I know you touched on some things about your worldview has changed, your way of being is changed. Do you have any distinct changes in preferences now that you're back here, or do you feel like you return with anything like downloads or spiritual gifts? I'm just interesting. I know you may have touched on some of these, but I wasn't sure if I had heard.
Yeah, when you say, excuse me, but when you say preferences, can you be a little bit more specific in terms of what you mean?
Like things that you like, do you focus on other activities rather than the ones that you had before? Do you feel like, that kind of thing?
That's a really good question. I used to play guitar a lot, and past couple of years I barely pick it up. I feel a calling to go back to it. Lately, I've started flying remote control airplanes. Something about that's very freeing, and maybe because it's up in the air. My interest in sports that I used to have is just pretty much everything, Patrick, has become less important. The earthly things, I'm more disconnected with them than I was before, because so much of me is kind of looking at this big thing and trying to put all that together. And I've really been wrestling with things like, well, why does there have to be so much sorrow? And why does man have to suffer so much? You look at a poor child with cancer and you say, they've done nothing. They've done nothing wrong. They haven't lived long enough to do something wrong. Why would God allow that to happen? And I mean, the only answer I've come up with that is that because it was really distressing me over the past couple of years. The answer I came up with is, well, geez, I have no control of it. I can't change that. So what can I do to help? But yeah, what my priorities were before, and again, family has become more important again. It's much more important when my children were younger. And then as they grew older, they go off and do different things, and family becomes kind of fragmented. And since that last experience, I mean, I owe my life to my wife, aside from my dog. Had she not been there, and there were a lot of times I used to swim alone, I don't know if I'd be here. So yeah, family's become a more important, like I said, sports, and even I used to listen to a lot more music, and just don't find myself. A lot of my time has been spent watching videos and researching other people's near-death experiences. So thank you for the question, Patrick.
Thank you for the answers. Very interesting. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bethany and then Glenn.
Thank you, Tina. And yes, Kevin, I have a question about, because of your multiple experiences, I'm wondering if you can share your insight on the evolution of human consciousness. There's a lot of talk now about, and it would just be your personal opinion, not necessarily anything else, but there's a lot of talk about, consciousness rising and people becoming more aware and more sensitive and more compassionate and empathetic towards others. And I just wondered, what are your thoughts about the evolution of human consciousness? Like, what is your vision for what the future could hold for humanity?
Wow, that's a question for a whole nother session. My goodness. I think we're at a pivotal point right now in terms of how we're acting as a worldwide community. And I wish I could say I feel better about it than I do. Obviously I'm concerned. I see hope for the future, but where we're going to go, and again, are we just humans? Or maybe when we go back, do we go to another solar system, another universe? Is this all there is Earth, or is this kind of like the Hindu method of progression? Each lifetime I'm moving up. Well, maybe when I move up, am I not coming back to Earth? Maybe I'm going to a more advanced civilization where people are better connected, because one of the things I probably didn't talk about that I should is the connectivity with other people, especially when I was, up in that realm. You could just feel other people. I mean, we're all one, we may be individuals, but we're all part of a great collective. And what, I guess my question back would be, what is it going to take to get people to realize that and to bring them together and say, okay, we need to work together as a group and not all this political and social and economic division that we have going on. Because I think life could be great. I think it could be amazing. And again, it's all between the ears, right? Every day, hell or heaven is between my ears. It's my perception of what happens. But at the same time, it's how difficult it takes to get to that point of happiness, right? If I'm in a terrorist cell in a prison somewhere, it's very hard to be happy. I think I could do it, but it'd be very, very hard to do it. Whereas if I'm, just sitting on the beach and I have my family there, well, it's very easy to be happy. So I guess the evolution I'd like to see would be more of a community. I think we've lost a lot of that with social media, with cell phones, and everyone's so distracted and so focused on me instead of on us. And that's what's really great about IANDS is I just feel a great connection with people that come here and tell their stories, and it really feels like a great community. So I just hope we get back to, my aunt used to say to me, and I'm very connected with my aunt, she just passed last year, and I had called her every week for about 6 years before she had passed, and she used to tell me, I look out the window and they're waiting at the bus stop, and all these kids are on their cell phone and they're not talking to each other, and it was completely different than when I was growing up in the 70s and I was out in Long Island, and kids were out playing all day and they were interacting, and you'd go out in the morning, you wouldn't be home till after till dark, and there was much more of a feeling of community and connectiveness, and I guess my question would be, what's it going to take to get back to that? Because unfortunately, in that way, I think we've kind of been heading in the wrong direction. We've been isolating ourselves and distracted more as opposed to loving and connecting more.
Hmm. Thank you so much, Kevin. That was a tough question, and I think you answered it beautifully. Thank you so much.
You did good. So Glenn, did you change your mind about asking a question? You still there? Is he still there? Okay, that's it. I guess, well, it's 8:35, so
I'm going to stop recording right now.
okay.
Um,
Thank you all for coming. We can
Okay.
continue to talk if we wish, right?